GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar, and then project management, like Basecamp is like a project management tool. So if you're thinking about doing this, you ought to at least know what's out there in terms of technology to make you be able to work more efficiently in a part-time job. And you don't have to learn them all, but you should at least know what they are so that in conversation, if they, for example, are using a type of project management system that you haven't used before, you can say, you know, I haven't used that one, but it sounds like it's very similar to Basecamp. I'm familiar with Basecamp, so get familiar with one of them at least. Will the office culture or collaboration suffer? So it's important for you when you are talking about a part-time role or a flexible role to express the fact that you are collaborative and to give examples of how you've been collaborative even when you're not in the office all the time, okay? Not enough face time. Not knowing how much employees actually accomplishing. So that's where, we'll go into this in a little bit, I'll be quick about it, but your ability to communicate and your communications is really important always through a job search. How you respond, how responsive you are is super important, but when you're working part-time or remotely or flexible, it's even more important to check in, to give updates, because that person doesn't see you all the time. Hey, what's the status on that? So it's important that you're proactive and you do that. Not fear of losing control. So my comment on this is if you are a micromanager, you are probably not going to be a great boss for an employee who is working remotely or working part-time. If you sense in your interviews or when you get on a job that you are being micromanaged, you are going to have to learn to manage up and to figure out a way to make the relationship work, because that person, by personality or by the way their style, it's going to be hard for them because they give up. They're not able to see you all the time. People who are more experienced are more likely to be hired into flexible work. If you have previous part-time experience, previous flexible work, previous remote work experience, you have to promote that, because people would rather hire you to work remotely if you know that you can do it. Everybody applies. We get triple the amount of applications for any 100% virtual job, because everybody thinks that they can work remotely, but a lot of people can't. If you don't know how to focus and to manage your time, you have to learn to not be distracted. It's not for everybody. And a lot of people we have come back saying, interview with us saying they're looking for on-site because they're in a remote position. It's too isolating for them. So you have to really think about that. It sounds really good, but it's not really good for everybody. Self-motivated, self-starters. You've got to impress upon people that you're a self-starter. If you are the kind of person that needs somebody every day to tell you what to do, you could be a great employee, or that you need that verbal feedback after you take a step before you go on to the next step, you might not be great for flexible work. Collaborative, we talk about open to feedback. So this is important because when you're working in a part-time role, it might be the first time that your boss has allowed this, especially if it's a small business. So you need to be willing to say, is this going okay for you? How's this working? Do I need to check in more? Or what could be, how could we make this better? So you have to be open to a little bit of feedback related to the style or even to the quality of work. And they often find that continuous learners are better in these types of roles because they're willing to learn the new technology, and to figure out new ways of maintaining the communications or the data or whatever it might be. Again, this is the biggest one, which we just talked about, but making sure you are very clear on what your deliverables are, when things are due, what the expectations are, and taking it upon yourself to ask those questions if a manager doesn't provide you with that type of information. Regular check-ins. A lot of people say, start the week off with a check-in about this is what I plan to do. Very important for part-time, for people who are overachievers. Nothing is worse than scope creep, right? Being paid for part-time hours but doing full-time work. And so learning how to say no, or learning how to say, these are my 4 priorities this week, but given the fact that I'm only working 20 hours, of these 4, what do you want me to work on first? Because you might not get to number 3 and 4. But being open about that, right? And kind of reminding themselves that you're only getting paid for whatever it is that you're getting paid for.
You brought up a really good point, which I've actually encountered before, and a lot of people will try to make it seem as though you really should be able to do that, when in fact it's not really humanly possible. Mm-hmm. But they make it seem like you're the one that's inefficient because you can't do those things, even though everybody else will corroborate say that it's not possible. So they'll try and that's how they'll try and squeeze it out of you. Mm-hmm. How to deal with that?
Well, I think that establishing the parameters up front about what that flexible environment is going to work like, and it sounds like I'm speaking from 2 sides, because I also think you have to understand that flexibility works both ways. You have to be open to being flexible at times too, and not just being given the flexibility, right? So I think you have to convey that. But I also think you have to set parameters about, okay, these are the expectations. So let's just say, it's just an example, like if you're working between 10 and 2, and the boss calls you all the time at 3 o'clock, or is asking for appointments, you need to learn to say, I'm not available then. You don't have to say why. If you start to go into that, you go down the wrong road. Mm-hmm. I'm not available, but I'm available tomorrow at 9. How does that work? So that's part of it. And the other part, I think, is that, checking in and saying, this is what I'm completing, and this is what's on my plate. And so you're driving what the deliverables are, what the deliverable deadlines are. You're almost starting to drive what those expectations are. If you run into more roadblocks like that, then I think that person really wants you for full time, and they're just cheap and want to pay you for part-time hours. So I think you have to be careful about that. You're at the point in your lives when you go in for a job, like you are interviewing the employer as much as they're interviewing you. So you need to make sure that they understand the scenario too. Be clear on your goals. So after hearing your stories, it's really important that very early on, in an email, in a conversation, in an interview, on your resume, on that top section of your profile, you are very clear about what it is that you want through this flexible arrangement. So some of you want to do exactly what you're doing at the same level. In that case, you don't need to be as clear. But if you are transitioning from engineering to something else, from project management or operations into something else, you need to be very clear up front, because otherwise people are going to not know what to do with you. So sometimes when you start to talk about what you bring to the table, you spend too much time talking about the background that you have that might not be as relevant to your current story. It's so part of who you are, you can't help but mention it. But if you have been there, done that, don't want that high-level job, a concern of employers hiring our candidates is that they're overqualified, right? So they've got that in the back of their mind. Instead of waiting 30 minutes into the interview for the employer to say to you, well, my concern is that you're overqualified, I think you need to start with it and say, you probably think I'm overqualified, but this is why I want this job. So in a very positive way, you say, it might be, I've managed 25 people before.
Right.
I did it really well. I don't want to do it anymore. And then think, usually that takes care of the concern. Or I was a VP of blah, 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 and I traveled, 2 weeks out of the month. I don't want to do that anymore. I actually want to do the job of the person I supervise. That's what I love doing. But I don't want to bring my work home with me. I think it's okay to be honest and say that. But do it early.
real quick about the resume. We're so schooled now to tailor your resume, put in the keywords, but that seems to me, if you're applying through Indeed or something like that, this seems to me, I'm really drawn to, present yourself and make it more like a skills-based type of resume.
Yep. I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of, I think people are over concerned about keywords to the point that they finish their resume and it's not who they are.
Right.
When it's not who you are, it's really hard to talk about yourself when it's not who you are. I think the keywords and targeting your resume, I think targeting your resume is important, but at the same time, you don't want to distort who you are. And because you're less likely to find jobs through the online, where the keywords they're using to put you in piles,
Automated.
I wouldn't worry so much about it. When it comes to the skills-based resume, I have a strong personal opinion about it. I think as a hiring manager, I want to know very quickly, because I'm only spending 15 seconds looking at your resume. I want to get your story. And oftentimes a chronological resume can tell your story better than a skills-based. Skills-based, sometimes it's like, well, when did she do that? And what was that accomplishment? And where do I piece that together? And if I can't figure you out, I'm going to put you in a notebook. So I'm a fan of the chronological resume with a profile or a summary at the beginning. That's really your skills-based resume. It's that with 3 or 4 sentences, something that makes it sizzle, and that's where you should say, I'm transitioning. That's where you should say, I've gone back to school to get these skills. Or I'm looking for a second career that utilizes X, Y, and Z. It's what you bring to the table. And I think that's where you can do it.
So it'd be like a short paragraph.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yep. But be careful if you don't want to do sales anymore. You don't want to, even in your chronological resume, you don't want to over highlight the sales. If you want to transition to marketing, let's just say, then highlight the marketing things that you did in that job and not the sales things, even if the marketing piece you only did for 10% of your job. Keep the stuff in that's relevant to what you want to do. Take the rest out. Hook up with your talent. Nobody's going to hire you because you want a flexible job. So don't start with that. Hook up with your talent, and once you get the hook, use the flexibility as part of the negotiations. Now, in all fairness to the employer, if the job posting says this is a 40-hour-a-week job with no, no exceptions, I wouldn't apply for it. I might send a letter and say, I would love this job, and I think I can do this job in 30 hours a week. But I would be respectful of their situation as well. But for a lot of companies, especially the smaller ones, they're willing to do some give and take, but hook them with what you bring to the table first. Flexibility works both ways. So we have had tons and tons of candidates lose jobs at the second interview because they asked too many questions about, well, can I leave at 3 o'clock? And I'm not going to be able to come on Thursdays, and I'm concerned that this is really a 30-hour-week job and not a 20-hour. And all of a sudden, it's all about me and all about what I want. And the employer's like, okay, too many demands.
Wow.
So be careful about that. I think it's okay to say, you've come to the agreement the job is 20 hours a week. You can say, I am fully committed for 20 hours a week. What would be best for me, when I'm open to discussion, would be to be able to spread the 20 hours a week over 3 days. Willing to negotiate what days. So you're giving a little, you're asking for a little, you're giving a little. Express a commitment and eagerness and interest. There is a perception of older workers that they're not going to be as committed. There is a perception that they're not as interested in learning new things. I'm not saying that these are reality, but the perception is there. So when you go and you are interviewing, it is even more of a burden on you, where you really need to be even more interested than maybe you might come across normally. You need to express that eagerness. Embrace new technologies. These are the things that technology is being used for that really lend themselves well if you're in a flexible role. And understand that there may be trade-offs. So bigger companies, and I skipped this, so you got the small businesses that are really into flexible work. You also have larger firms that have embraced it. If they have, you're going to know that, because any larger company that has embraced flexibility has paid a lot of money for consultants to develop their flexible work policies, and it's going to be all over their careers pages. So for the bigger companies, they will have policies. So you ought to ask questions about who's eligible for flexible work, what does it look like at their company, what types of roles. So these are the kinds of questions you should ask. The downside of the small business, or the upside, depending upon how you look at it, they don't have policies. They're more saying, oh, this is like a benefit to me, okay, I'll hire you. So the upside is that you can help create that path, and you can help define what that might look like at a company, which is really a lot of fun. The downside is that when your boss, who's totally open to flexible work, leaves, there's no policy, somebody else comes in, and they're not so happy with the arrangement. So just a word of warning. We talked about that, establishing the parameters and sticking to them, and thinking about how you might need to change the way you work, especially for those overachievers who say yes to everything. This might be a time in your life where you're doing flexible, you have a part-time job, you have to learn to say no. Or say, well, if you want me to do that, I'm going to have to figure out something else. It might not be how you're used to communicating and how you're used to working. Okay, for us, this is our website. Register. When you do, you put in your contact information, there's a blank comments field. You need to make sure that you put in there that you met me at 40 plus, because referrals are really important. Again, it's how people get jobs. Say that you met me, and you all ought to go on LinkedIn and connect with me. And don't just connect, write just a personal message and let me know, A, that you met me, and give me a little tidbit about your background that you've already given me, because I'll remember it then, right? I was the person who had a career in whatever. So remind me who you are. These are the two websites. Great websites here for flexible work. So definitely take a look at those. I think that is it, other than I was just listening.
Yeah, could you go back? Yeah, I wanted to take a picture of it too. For sending a PDF.
Those are the best two resources I've found so far. And the other thing I would say about transition in general, about looking for flexible work and just kind of transitioning to something totally different, what's most important to you? Figure that out. Take the time to think about that. So look at all these different factors, and there might be more for you, and organize them according to what's important to you. There's no right or wrong answer, but you ought to know going in what it is that you're really looking for, and being clear on those goals, right? And be open to the fact that sometimes, especially if you want to do something new, you might have to take a step back to propel yourself forward, and that's okay. That we look at job and careers like this in this country. You start and you go the steady line, steady work, and you go up like that. Well, I think for most people, it's not how it happens. It's much more like this. And so if you are going to go into something new, you might have to take a job at a lower level. And you need to be okay with it, but you also need to convey to the person interviewing you that you are okay with that. Because the person interviewing you might be younger and might not be at that point in their lives and might not really understand that. And so part of it is educating them. Look, I know that this job I'm overqualified for, or it's totally different, but this is why I want it. And really, really explaining that to people and not allowing them to make the assumptions. That's it.
Thank you, Sheila. Very informative. I certainly learned a lot. I think this is very helpful for our audience. So once again, make sure you sign in on the forms outside.